As a commuter, there's no better feeling than belting through the suburbs on an express train, watching stations and scenery flash past, and maybe even overtaking a few slower trains. But not every line in Melbourne has regular express trains, and of those that do, some operate much more effectively than others. In this video, we're going to look at why that is, how the nature of express running varies between lines, how it actually benefits the system, and how sometimes it doesn't. The ability to run express trains effectively is largely dictated by infrastructure, but there are also different priorities on different lines depending on passenger travel patterns. First up, let's take a look at a line which has probably the most extensive express operation relative to its restrictive infrastructure. It's one I might have mentioned once or twice on the channel before, the Hurstbridge line. During peak times, the Hurstbridge line has some pretty significant expresses, which run
express from Jolimont to Victoria Park, running express from Clifton Hill to Ivanhoe, Ivanhoe to Heidelberg, then stopping all stations to Hurstbridge.
These trains give a great feeling of progress as you head out into the suburbs, but how much time do they actually save? Well, on the section between Clifton Hill and Heidelberg, which has a line speed of 80 km per hour, a local train stopping all stations takes about 16 minutes, while the express does it in 11, saving 5 minutes. On the Jolimont to Victoria Park section, which is much busier with Mernda line trains in the mix and has a lower line speed of 55 km per hour, local trains are timed to take 6 minutes. Express timings do vary a little bit, but most of them are timetabled to take also 6 minutes. So over that whole impressive looking run, on average, you'll only get to your destination 5 minutes faster. There's a hard limit to how much time express running can save on the Hurstbridge line because the track layout doesn't allow overtaking moves, so it's only ever a matter of time until you catch up with the local train ahead. Typically, an express will be timetabled to depart as far behind the previous local train as possible, creating the biggest possible gap for a clear run through the inner suburbs. It will usually follow a stopping all stations Mernda train as far as the junction at Clifton Hill, which is why it can't really save any time on that first section. The express then gets a good clear run for a bit before catching up to the local around Heidelberg. The two trains then continue just a few minutes apart, both stopping all stations, as far as Greensborough, where the local will terminate and our previously express train can then run past and continue to the end of the line. So if we look at that pattern with multiple trains, and I'm just showing trains in one direction here to avoid confusion, you can see that the express running takes up quite a bit of space. And this is the problem with running trains at different average speeds when you can't overtake. That space could alternatively be used for more local services, as trains running at a similar speed can be timed much closer together. And that's exactly what they do on some of the busiest double track lines, such as Craigieburn and Sunbury, which have only a handful of daily expresses between them. But the outer part of the Hurstbridge line is mostly single track, which restricts how many trains you can run, so running twice the frequency over the entire length of the line isn't actually an option. A benefit of the expresses here, in addition to saving a few minutes for the people making longer journeys, is that they encourage passengers bound for the inner suburbs to catch the local train, which then ensures space on the express is prioritised for those passengers who need to catch a train heading to the end of the line. This line is also a bit unusual in that there are some quite lightly used stations not that far from the city, such as Werribee and Eaglemont. So running express through there when the train is full of passengers heading to busier stations further out makes a lot of sense. There is of course a way to solve all these problems, and that is by having more than two tracks. Melbourne has several sections of quadruple track, with probably the best example being the section between the city and Caulfield. Trains on this section are split by route, with the Frankston line using the southern track pair, and the lines heading towards Dandenong, that's the Cranbourne, Pakenham and Gippsland lines, using the northern pair. While there are platforms on all four tracks at all stations along here, the normal practice is for most Frankston trains to run as locals, while all Dandenong trains run express, allowing them to seamlessly fly past the Frankston trains as required. Due to a historical quirk, the tracks used for express trains are officially known as the Caulfield local lines, while the pair used for locals are called the Caulfield through lines. This is because it was the Frankston line which usually ran express when the line was quadruplicated back in 1914, and while the express patterns have changed over time, the line naming hasn't. But this is just internal language, so it doesn't actually matter to passengers. Until recently, there were a bunch of crossovers at Caulfield which allowed trains from any line to operate on either the local or through lines if required, which added a lot of flexibility. However, in early 2023, these crossovers were removed, separating the lines entirely, so it's effectively just two parallel double-track lines now rather than proper quad track. Personally, I think removing flexibility in a place like this is definitely a bad thing. While it's easy enough to make passengers just change to the other line if there's a disruption, both these lines also carry daily freight trains, which now have no alternative route if one track pair is out of action, and unlike suburban trains, can't easily be reversed and sent back the other way. The Frankston line itself has a mixture of express and local trains during peak hour, but unlike the Hurstbridge line where overtaking isn't possible, beyond Caulfield, the Frankston line has a feature which allows these expresses a much longer clear run. Something we have here in Melbourne which is a bit unusual is two long sections of triple track, one on the Frankston line between Caulfield and Moorabbin, and the other on the Burnley group between Burnley and Box Hill. A lot of people don't like the idea of triple track, as unlike with quadruple track, you can't evenly split trains into two categories in either direction. However, while 4 is always going to be better than 3, the triple track sections are still extremely useful and provide a significant increase in flexibility over a double track line. The way the triple track sections operate is that the outer two tracks are for trains travelling in one direction only. So you have a down line for trains running away from the city and an up line for trains running towards the city. The middle track is called the centre line and is signalled for bidirectional operation. Generally what happens is that during the off-peak, the line just operates as double track. Then during peak times when express trains start appearing, the third track comes into use, with one track, generally the centre line, being used by all express trains, allowing them to fly past the locals on the outer tracks. Obviously, you can only do this in one direction at any given time, so in the morning there will be 2 tracks in use for up trains, then the opposite in the afternoon. Having this ability to overtake makes express trains vastly more effective, and on the Frankston line, expresses typically save around 10 minutes over the stopping all stations timetable. But the benefits of triple track extend well beyond its use for overtaking moves. Because any of the 3 tracks can be taken out of use if required, leaving the other 2 handling all trains, there's a huge increase in flexibility compared to a double track line. If a train breaks down or has to wait for emergency services to attend or any number of other things, it's easy enough to change which pair is in use and allow following trains to pass. It also means that some maintenance tasks can be done on one track while trains are still running on the other 2, and during the recent grade separation works at Glen Huntly, it allowed a lot of the work to be done in stages, one side at a time. Another city that's much more well known for triple track operation is New York, but the centre track there usually doesn't have a platform at most stations, so it's usable by express trains only, unlike in Melbourne where every triple track station has 3 platforms, allowing this high level of flexibility. So yes, while quadruple track will always be better, expanding 2 tracks to 3 is cheaper and easier than going to 4, and if that means you get something rather than nothing, then that's a very good thing. Now, we really need to take a look at the Burnley group, which has a wildly complex timetable of different expresses. Look, here's 4 different stopping patterns in just 4 trains. Ignore what I just said there, I can actually see 7 different stopping patterns in 8 trains. There's plenty of potential for overtaking moves on this group. The section from the city out to Burnley is quadruple track and passes through East Richmond Station, which has the outer local lines running through the 2 platforms, while the express tracks run through the middle, the only station in Victoria with this arrangement.
Stopping all stations to Flinders Street except East Richmond.
Unlike Caulfield, there are lots of crossovers at Burnley, so most trains can be routed via the local or through line if required and still access their destination. Then there's the aforementioned triple track section from Burnley to Box Hill, which is just over 10 kilometres long, roughly 3 kilometres longer than the one on the Frankston line. The flexibility of this section is also higher, as there are crossovers about halfway along at Camberwell, allowing trains to cross between the centre line and the up or down lines midway, unlike the Frankston line triple track, which has no intermediate crossovers. Heading out west, the Sunbury and Werribee lines run parallel out to Footscray, but like Caulfield, there's no connection between the 2 lines at Footscray, so the last chance to divert is back at North Melbourne. The only intermediate station here is South Kensington, which has platforms on the Werribee line only, so all Sunbury line trains run express here. South Kensington is known for its beautiful aesthetic and expansive passenger facilities, and is rather unlike the station of the same name on the London Underground. But if you want to enjoy a really long express run, you need to head out on the V-Line network, where a lot of trains on long distance routes get extended non-stop running on the inner part of their journey, like this Warrnambool train which runs express all the way from Footscray to Geelong. And the lower frequencies outside the suburban area make this kind of thing possible without encountering other traffic. During peak times, V-Line is also known to practice a slightly more unusual type of express running, where trains alternate stopping at some minor stations. This solves the problem of a single express train catching up with a local, as the overall average speed evens out between trains. However, it creates another problem, where at certain times there is no way to catch a train directly between certain pairs of stations. For instance, if you're at Corio at 5 p.m. on a weekday, for some reason, and you want to go to North Shore, a journey that normally only takes 3 minutes, you'll have to travel the wrong way back to Lara and hang around there for 20 minutes before catching another train back towards Geelong. Back in the suburban area, there's one other significant bit of express running which we must take a quick look at, and that's the Werribee Express section between Newport and Laverton, where express trains take an entirely different route, using the old main line to Geelong. The loop running through Altona was originally a short branch line, which was joined up when Werribee was electrified in the 80s, allowing through running. The Altona line is mostly single track and winds slowly through the beachfront suburb with 3 stations, while the express route is double track with no stations at all, anymore, and a line speed of 115 km per hour, which is a very satisfying run, knocking about 7 or 8 minutes off the time taken via Altona. I personally think it's kind of pointless that the express section is still shown on the network map. It would have made sense before it was joined up and the intermediate stations were closed, but now it doesn't really tell passengers anything they need to know, given the map doesn't show any other express patterns. So there are lots of different ways to do express trains, and we have examples of most of them here in Victoria. I think it is worth considering that beyond their primary purpose of reducing running times, expresses do have a feel-good element. Even on trains which only save a handful of minutes, passengers enjoy the feeling of rapid progress that comes with non-stop running, and it's little things like that which improve the overall experience and make people more likely to choose public transport as their preferred means of travel. There are a few lines I haven't mentioned in this video, and that's because express trains don't play a big part in their timetables and or aren't particularly noteworthy. But I do want to do a quick shout out to the Sandringham line, which manages to have one single express, the 6:05 p.m. up, which runs non-stop to Elsternwick for some reason. And also the Mernda line, which has a bunch of different express patterns running out against the morning peak, getting trains in position for later runs. So that's it. Thanks to my supporters on Patreon who keep me running on the express track, and thanks for watching.